Welcome to the Power Hour with Sydney and Caroline. I'm Dr. Caroline Heldman, and it is my honor to serve as the Executive Director of the Representation Project. At the Representation Project, we use media to fight sexism. So in the struggle for intersectional gender justice, we use research and films, documentary films. You may know some of our films, Misrepresentation and the Mask You Live In. We also use social media campaigns, and we run youth filmmaker programs that focus on the most marginalized youth and making sure that their voices are heard. And I am so happy to be co-sponsoring this event with the Critical Theory and Social Justice Department at Occidental College. So this is part of our Matrix series. So it is the Matrix Power Hour today. And let me pass the baton to my fantastic co-host, Sydney Corey.
Hi, everyone. So the Power Hour, as some of you may already know, is a monthly interview series that features extraordinary influential change makers. And the purpose of this series is to bring the wisdom of activists and thought leaders to inspire you to take action. So I'm so excited to introduce our guest, Prabhleen Kaur Lamba. Hello, thank you for being here. Prabhleen is a high school student, athlete, advocate, and author. Her book, She Plays to Win, explores the world of women's sports and equality. She enjoys watching sports and is also passionate about volunteering in her community. So Prabhleen, you're a senior in high school and you've already written a book. I'm trying to get on your level. So please tell us a bit about your journey, how you got interested in the subject of women in sports, and how you decided to write this book.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been fortunate to have been playing sports since a young age. It's always played such a critical part in my life. Growing up in elementary school, I did gymnastics, swimming, and the sport I've done for the longest has been basketball. So I've been very fortunate to have the opportunity to play sports and be involved in sports. But unfortunately, many of my friends, and especially girls, they have not. So when high school started, I would ask a lot of them like, hey, you're not in any sports. You know, our school offers a lot of sports. We have basketball, badminton, tennis, volleyball. And I asked them if they wanted to try any of them out with me because sports has always been something I loved. And some of them would say, no, like, you know, sports aren't for me. A lot of them would say, oh, I'm not athletic enough for sports. So those kind of things, I just felt bad for them that I have this opportunity of not just like sports being fun for me, but a lot of organizations have done research on this too, that especially for girls who play sports, it boosts their self-confidence, it helps them do better in their academics. So one of the reasons I wanted to write this book was to inspire young girls and young women to be involved in sports. And the other reason was growing up, I followed a lot of, and even now I love following professional athletes in the WNBA, the NWSL, the US Women's National Soccer Team. And I grew up reading articles and hearing news stories about their fights for equal pay or when they were advocating for more media coverage and to be given the recognition they deserve for all the training and hard work they put in to become pro athletes. So all of those things just kind of combined together. And then I started working on this book about last year. So I came across an opportunity. There's a professor at Georgetown who helps first-time authors publish their books. So I started with him, got involved in that. And since then, I've just been really enjoying this journey and really grateful to be here.
Well, I would very much echo Sydney's sentiments, right? That we're trying to level up so we can join you, Prabhleen. I want to be you when I grow up. You're incredible. And so just quickly, I met Prabhleen at a conference focused on girls in STEAM at NASA a few years ago. And when you shared with me your idea that you were going to maybe be writing a book, I thought to myself, yeah, she'll do it. Just based upon your presentation and what you've accomplished so far in life. But let's drill down on She Plays to Win. What has your process been in terms of researching this book? What did you discover along the way that you didn't expect to find? And what are you hoping the impact of this book will be?
Yeah, absolutely. So initially when I started out, there are kind of three main parts of my books, you can say. So the first one was really researching the background, the history of women's sports. And I talked to a lot of professors and researchers who've been working in this field for many years, or people working at nonprofits that focus on creating more opportunities for young girls and women to be involved in sports. And through that, I just learned so much that I didn't know before, that, what happened, or the women who came before me are sisters who did the work so that I have the opportunity to play sports today that I wasn't aware of. So just hearing their stories, and I was interviewing some women who are now in their 80s about, so when they wanted to play sports when they were my age, their high school didn't even offer a tennis team. And I was like, this is something I couldn't even imagine, because I've been playing competitive sports since I was in elementary school. So just hearing their stories and hearing how much progress we've made, but also how much progress there still needs to be made, was really inspiring. So that was kind of the first focus of my book. And the next part was probably the most exciting for me. I wanted to interview a number of top professional women athletes. So that was really exciting, because I never knew how do you reach out to Lindsey Vonn, or how do you reach out to Christy Yamaguchi, all these Olympians and famous athletes I'd seen on TV. I wanted to speak to them. So I did some research that they're represented by sports agents. So I spent time emailing a lot of sports agents, calling people up, sharing my story, how I want to write a book. And fortunately, I had the opportunity to speak with and interview so many amazing women athletes from different sports: basketball, ice hockey, figure skating, alpine skiing, and even I had the opportunity to interview some Paralympians, which was really inspiring. So I just kind of combined their stories and shared how they faced similar challenges to me when I was younger, and how they're using their platform now to make sure they give back to the next generation. And the third part that I focused on in my book was that women can be involved in sports, not just as athletes, but also as reporters or coaches or front office staff. So that was also really exciting for me. I got the opportunity to interview some women who work at ESPN, and they shared with me that even though female athletes, women in sports, they account for 40% of all athletes, they only receive 4% of media coverage, which I thought was crazy, because 4% is not even close to 40. So they shared how every day when they wake up, they cover the WNBA, they cover women's sports. Their goal is to help bridge that gap and fix that percentage so that female athletes are given just as much recognition as they deserve and equal to their counterparts. I also had the opportunity to interview coaches who have made broken down barriers. They've become coaches in NBA teams or even men's sports leagues. And I think that's really powerful too, to see, for young girls and women, to see other women in leadership positions where they're leading a team on the court or coaching even men or women's sports teams. And the last part was how I ended off my book. So I wanted to learn how young girls and women my age or even younger are working to bridge this gap. And that one was probably something I wasn't even aware about before, because I met other high school students. I even met some middle school students who are just 10, 11 years old, and they're interviewing WNBA players and writing blogs about how they want to see women athletes covered and they want to see their role models shown on television, being paid equally. So that was just really inspiring for me to see that we have all these women who have done work since so many years, and then now we're working together to do even more work and make more progress based on what they've already done.
Thank
I
you.
love to hear that. Oh my gosh, hearing that, middle schoolers are getting involved. That's amazing. I'm so stoked for just the future. Given all of the negative things that are going on, this is amazing to hear. But can you please tell us about your experience as a girl athlete? Have you experienced or witnessed sexism in sports?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so fortunately, my journey's been pretty great so far, but I do have some personal stories of mine that I also share in the book. One of them I share near the beginning is, so at our high school, we have to take 2 years of PE as a part of our graduation requirement. So it was my freshman year of PE, and we were playing, we had a basketball tournament as our sport in class. So the way the game worked was that you make your teams, and then whoever wins the most game on running, they have to run the least amount of laps. And based on however many you lose, you have to run more. So basically, the teacher was giving us an incentive to make sure we tried in PE and played well. So I noticed anytime we were obviously playing together, it's boys and girls playing basketball together. And anytime one of the boys would score on the team or make a 3-pointer or drive in, everyone would clap for them. They'd give them high fives. And then when I drove in and scored a basket for my team, one of the boys was like, "Oh, why are you playing so aggressively?" Right? And I was like, very interesting how like when we do the same thing, we get a different response from others. So just small things like that, or seeing at basketball camps when, you know, the boys and girls are playing together. When a boy scores on a girl, it's like not a big deal. But when us scores, everyone goes crazy. They're like, oh my gosh, like how'd you get scored on by a girl? Or like, how did a girl beat you? So just those type of things I've noticed over the course of the years. But honestly, those just inspire me to keep going. And then the other part, a lot of my friends trying to encourage them to play sports, whether it be in their cultural norms that they don't pay much attention to giving their daughters, their girls opportunities to participate in sports. And many of them in underprivileged communities, it's not that they don't want to play sports, it's just that they've never been given the opportunity to. So kind of just exposing them to different sports and giving them the opportunity that, you know, we don't just have to be players in sports, but we can also pursue sports as a career in the future, whether that be as a reporter or a coach. And I think especially having more women's sports reporting and covering sports will help bridge the gap in media coverage. Because I think when women are brought to the table alongside with amazing men who are also working in the sports field, I think they bring a diverse perspective and really widen the discussions that are going on right now.
Well, Prabhleen, I can verify that a recent study we did at the REP Project for the Respect Her Game campaign, we analyzed media coverage during the first week of the Olympics, and we found that 8 out of 10 hosts who were doing the live commentary were men. And so you're absolutely right. I'm sure you have this data in your book, but the biases are pretty extreme in terms of who actually gets to narrate the action and what's happening, in addition to biases in what women athletes wear, how the camera angles sexualize them, language that diminishes them. So grown women being called girls, or even in some cases being called chicks live on television. So we found some pretty sexist coverage. So thank you for your work in that arena. Let's shift gears to your work in other arenas, because I know that even though you are passionate about this issue and you've written a book about it as a high schooler, it's not the only thing you're doing. You're involved in many different service projects. So can you tell us about other forms of activism or service that you are engaged in?
Yeah, absolutely. So a couple of things I've done at my high school. Sophomore year, I worked on a gun violence prevention presentation with my English teacher. So that's something that really hits home for me and a lot of my friends, being afraid of school shootings happening. So that's one subject I'm passionate about. And then as a member of the Sikh community, I practice Sikhism as my faith. So growing up, I saw my parents really involved in seva, which is also known as selfless service. So serving the community without expecting any return. And just seeing them go to different volunteer events. For example, every year on the July 4th, our community volunteers at the parade by distributing free water to everyone who comes to watch. So just going to those events with them have inspired me that anytime you see something that's wrong, you speak up. Or I'm also very passionate about serving my community and giving back, since it's given so much to me. Most recently, during the COVID-19 pandemic, my brother and we started an initiative called Cards for COVID Heroes. And that was just, we were watching the news one night and a mom came on to share her story. She was a nurse working in a hospital during COVID-19. And she told her 2 kids that I might not return home, since this was before the vaccine. And when the cases were really high, unfortunately, and she said, I may not return home, but I want you to know that mommy is a true hero. And that just really touched my heart. It showed me that, these healthcare workers, they're doing so much for us, risking their lives every day, going on the front lines to save our lives and take care of us. So the least we can do for them is to say thank you. So my brother and we collected thank you cards from across the world, actually, in the form of e-cards or students making cards and mailing them to us. And then we just tried to send them to as many healthcare workers we could, along with $10 gift cards that they could use to buy coffee or breakfast or anything to brighten their days, because those were definitely really dark times for them.
That's amazing. I mean, what is it that you don't do? Like, that's probably the best question to ask. But you have an incredible track record of activism as a teenager. So what are your future plans and where do you see yourself headed?
So after graduating high school, I want to attend college, meet more amazing people, learn about so many other amazing things. Something I aim to do in the future is I want to stay involved in community work, advocacy work, like both of you are doing, stay connected to this platform. And I also want to be a sports coach for young girls and women when I grow up, because I had a lot of amazing coaches growing up who inspired my passion and made sure that I played sports. So I just kind of want to give back by coaching basketball for young girls and women when I get a little older. And another thing, if I've really been wanting a professional sports team to come to the Bay Area where I live, because I've been wanting to go watch a women's sports game for so long. I haven't been able to go to one yet. So I know there have been talks about adding a soccer team to the Bay Area, but by the time I'm out of college, if there's not a basketball team, I'll definitely be advocating and wanting to bring a WNBA team to the Bay Area. It's been like one of my dreams since I was really young. So I think that'd be really cool.
That's awesome. Prabhleen, what advice do you have for junior high schoolers who might be watching this live or watching it later recorded, or college students in terms of a life of service and how to get involved in activism and what drives you along those lines?
Mhm. So first of all, I would say reach out to whoever you want to get help from or whoever's advocacy efforts you want to join. Like my book project, it would have been possible without the support of so many amazing women athletes who were willing to interview with me and everyone else who's been on this journey with me. And the other thing would be to never give up. When I initially started my book project, I was so excited about interviewing all these athletes, but I really had to learn like how to be professional, like how do you email sports agents? And oftentimes like I would send in my first month, I sent like hundreds and hundreds of emails and I got no response. So I was definitely a little put down by that, but I just kept persevering. I learned how to change my emails a little bit, sound more professional, more strategically how to reach out to athletes. Like maybe my friend knows someone who's a female athlete. So perseverance was definitely key there. And then the other thing I would say, networking was really important for me. So anytime I go to a conference or event and I see a project someone's working on I might be interested in, I make sure to stay in touch with them. So I think networking and mentorship have been really crucial in my journey too.
That is incredible advice. Thank you. And it seems like you would be a really good fit for Occidental College's Critical Theory and Social Justice Department, because you're already an agent of change in the world, and that is what we work on. Last question for you before we open it up to the audience, and folks should jump into the Q&A or the chat and leave your questions and we'll get right to them. But how do we buy your book?
Yes, so my book right here. I actually held it for the first time in my hands on Tuesday. So that was very exciting. It's available on Amazon right now. She placed when you can go purchase the ebook or the paperback. And then I'm working on the hardcover right now. So that should be available by the end of this year. And it'll also be available on Barnes & Noble retail stores soon. And then I'm going to start outreaching to some bookstores to hopefully get it there too. So it's available right now. And also, all the proceeds from my book are going to the Bay Area Women's Sports Foundation and Bay Area Women's Sports Initiative and Women's Sports Foundation. So there have been two nonprofits who've really been supporting my journey throughout this book. So I just wanted to give back to them in this way.
And thank you for that information. Couple of follow-up questions from that. Why that organization? And do you actually know where you're headed to college and what you're going to major in?
Yeah, so for the first one, Women's Sports Foundation, I actually attended one of their events over when we had online learning. So I was at home and I came across a flyer that they were hosting a women in sports event. So I attended the event and it was like a mentorship session with professional athletes in the field of women's sports. And I was just really inspired by the work they were doing. So I reached out to them and talked about my work and we partnered that way. And then the Bay Area Women's Sports Initiative, one of the co-founders of that organization, Brandy Chastain, she used to play soccer and I actually had the opportunity to interview her for my book. And that was it was such an inspiring interview and it was so cool like hearing her story because in the 1999 when she made that kick that won the game, I wasn't born yet, but I've seen it on YouTube and it was amazing. So I felt really grateful that, she gave her time and I learned more about the work that the organization is doing. And I felt connected to it as well, since they serve the Bay Area and I lived here, was born here and grew up here. So that's how I met those two nonprofits. And college right now, Major-wise, I definitely want to do something with how humans interact with technology, but I also want to do some type of minor or certificate in gender studies or women's studies to continue what I've been learning through my book project. And I'm researching different colleges applying right now, but I'm not sure where I'll be headed to.
Got it. Okay. Well, I'll just make another plug for critical theory and social justice then. And it's so funny that you weren't, I mean, it's not funny. You weren't born when Brandi Chastain ripped her shirt off after that awesome kick. So all the middle-aged folks know exactly who Brandi is. And that's incredible that you interviewed her for your book. I know Sydney has some questions, but so you've mentioned some of these amazing pro athletes. Who are some of the other athletes you interviewed for your book?
Yeah, so some of them were able to speak to me on the phone. Others sent me typed responses based on how their schedule was. But Brandi was actually one of the ones who I got to speak on the phone with, which was truly incredible. I had the chance to interview figure skater Christy Yamaguchi. I actually got the chance to interview Hillary Knight and Kendall Coyne from the women's ice hockey team. WNBA wise, I interviewed Renee Montgomery, which was truly amazing since she just became the co-owner of the Atlanta Dream. And I also interviewed a few sports reporters, Kareth Burke from the Golden State Warriors and LaChina Robinson, who works for ESPN.
Amazing. Are there any up and coming women athletes that you kind of have your eye on that you think their career is really going to take off? Is there anyone that we should kind of, be amplifying right now?
Yeah, I think I've been watching a lot of college basketball recently. So Paige Beckers is one of my favorite players to watch from UConn. I also really like seeing the new players who are coming onto the U.S. women's national team. And a lot of the WNBA rookies have been doing, or first, second, third year players, they've been doing great this year. They were talking about this at the Olympics too. Diana Taurasi, Sue Bird, who've been their main players, they're probably going to be retiring soon. So I definitely say keep an eye out on the WNBA rookies who are coming into the team. I'm excited to see how Team USA's Olympic team continues to grow in the future too.
Great. So it doesn't look like we have any questions from the audience. So why don't you close us on your final words of wisdom? I have something coming in from someone for me and Sydney. Corey, please invite Prabhleen again to give strong consideration to Oxy. What a wonderful person. Oxy should not miss out. Okay, so we're just doing the full court press here. I happen to know that this is from Barry Johnson, who is a graduate of Occidental College, and we probably have a lot of folks watching. I mean, it is kind of remarkable how closely you fit with the ethic of the institution, but we'll stop with the full court press. Mike Casper has a question. What advice do you have, Prabhleen, for girls?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I would say always believe in yourself. A lot of people will say no, or you can't do it, or you're too young. One story I actually have is recently when I published my book, I got an email from a 13-year-old who also lives in California. And she said, I've been really passionate about women's rights since I was a young girl, but a lot of people have told me that I'm not old enough yet to start my career in activism or advocacy. And she said, after seeing your book, I saw that I'm never too young to do anything. So I just started my women's rights blog on Instagram. So that was really inspiring for me to see how I can make an impact on other girls who I've never even met in person before. So I would say age is just a number. Never think you're too young, too old to do anything. And just always go for it. Always believe in yourself.
That's great.
That's actually a perfect segue to our next question. So we have an anonymous attendee. They said, are there any social media accounts of activists that we should follow?
Yeah, so you mean like individual activists or groups that are advocating?
I think either would be great.
I'm a huge fan for the work that there's a woman named Catherine Switzer, and she was first registered woman to run the Boston Marathon. I love following her on Instagram. In terms of, I also follow Together very closely, which is a newly formed media company by top women Olympians. And they're doing a lot of great work also to advocate for more opportunities and equal pay in media coverage in sports.
Thank you, Prabhleen. A question from Malik Moazzam Dolat. What do you think about the idea of there being a responsibility by athletes to advocate for equality given the conditions in U.S. sports?
Mhm. Yeah, so this was something I explored in my book too. I think it was I was talking to a professor and she said so many times when women do speak up, they're often put down because they risk their job, their salaries, or anything that they might lose. And she gave an example of the US women's national team when they were advocating for equal pay. They were told that if you don't, I don't remember the exact details, but it had something to do with if they don't close their court case where they were demanding more pay for what they were doing, they would not be able to compete in the next championship or something along those lines, where they would have to, if they were advocating or if they continued this court case, they would have to give up their job and their salary. So it's been a tough ride, but honestly, I think I feel very strong going into the future. I've seen so many girls and women coming together to advocate. So I think that women athletes who definitely feel passionate about this issue, and I know a lot of them do since they're living that, this is their life, they should go for it. And I'm all for them. I know a lot of other people will support you. So I personally love the idea of them advocating for equal pay for themselves. They deserve this media coverage. They work just as hard as everyone else. So they should definitely be given the recognition they deserve. And I know there's a lot of people who will be rooting for them, including all of us, and always supporting them no matter what challenges come their way.
That is just a fantastic note to end on. Thank you so much, Prabhleen, for your work, your activism, being such an inspiring role model, and being born after Brandy Chastain made that fantastic kick. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Next week, we will host a panel, same time, same place, on the status of women in Afghanistan. We will be sharing this recording. It will be up on the Representation Project website, as well as the Matrix website. Thank you again, Prabhleen, and I cannot wait to see what amazing things you do to change the world for the better in the coming years. Thank you.
Well,
Thank you so
both
much.
of you. It wouldn't have been possible with all the amazing mentors and people I look up to in my life. So thank you.
Awesome. Bye, everyone.
Bye.